Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Ciaran Tierney Digital Storyteller in association with the Galway Palestine Solidarity Campaign. And I'm really honoured and delighted to have three fantastic young women from Palestine with me tonight. It's kind of the end of an era for them, really, because all three are making plans to move on from Galway. They were here for a year as scholarship students. So we have Ruba Ayad, who's from Bethlehem and studied gender, globalization, and women's issues, I think. Faten al-Surani from Gaza City, who's an international human rights lawyer and is actually going on to The Hague or on to Holland after Ireland. And then Tala Zaitawi, who's a filmmaker from Ramallah and made a poignant documentary, which she's just finished about her year in Galway and the way the lockdown kind of followed her from Palestine to Ireland. So you had a very strange year. Who will I start with? Ruba, how was the experience of living in Ireland for you? And how did you change or what did you learn?
Oh, wow. Well, I learned a lot, I'll tell you that. I learned from the people. I learned a lot from my teachers. I think there's nothing that I would change about this year, obviously, not including COVID, but still, even with COVID, like good things happened. And I just learned how helpful people can be, even though like they come from completely different background. And I think just finding things that unite us as individuals, as humans, instead of like me being Palestinian, me being Irish, that obviously doesn't mean anything. And I think I learned a lot from Irish people. I think I just learned how open-minded they are, how they're willing to learn about your story. So that was very like amazing.
Yes.
I'm excited. I really enjoyed this year, but I'm just want to go home. It's been like long 13 months, and just going home, like just to see my family, my friends, making sure that all of them are okay, and just taking what I learned in Ireland and just applying it back home. And I think, like me personally, I just changed in all the like positive things. So it was a really good year.
Excellent. Now, I interviewed all three of you together about a month ago for my own newspaper, the Connacht Tribune. And Tala, you joked that you came to Ireland to make a film about social farming, which I actually didn't know much about, but it's how people use farming as a kind of therapy for people with mental health problems, disabilities, things like that. And you actually taught me and others a little bit about social farming. The problem was you had to cycle from Galway out to Oranmore outside the city to film them at the social farm. You built up a lot of trust with them, and then suddenly, wham, coronavirus hit, and you couldn't go out there anymore. So you joked to us when I was interviewing you for the newspaper that lockdown and restrictions followed you from the West Bank to Galway, which is not something you could have expected. And then you had to go to make a documentary which was much different than you expected. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So at first I started with my social farming project, which is how you said it's how people with disabilities use farming in order to improve their mental and physical health. So I looked at social farming because people with disabilities back home in Palestine are neglected. We barely have centers for them. And if we do, families need to pay for them. And a lot of them can't afford it. So when I heard about social farming here in Ireland, it automatically I automatically thought about an opportunity for people with disabilities back in Palestine. So I decided to do my film to compare both social farming here in Ireland and people with disabilities back in Palestine, specifically in a refugee camp called Qaddura Refugee Camp in Ramallah. I chose that refugee camp because it's not supported by any organization locally or globally. So I focused on that. And then after COVID came, my supervisor told me that I had to include it. So I decided to also include myself and my experiences in my film. So I compared the restrictions, how during my bachelor's degree, 4 years, I had to go through so many checkpoints in order to reach my college, and a lot of times my college was raided at least by Israeli soldiers at least once a week. So that of course affected my experience. So coming here to Galway, I felt more of the freedom that I have here in Ireland without going through checkpoints, just going with 10 minutes and I'd reach my college. Not like back home, I need at least like 2 hours with checkpoints and traffic and all of that. So I had to include COVID, and I decided to do it about my experiences, about my college back home and here.
Yeah, because presumably, like from September until March, when the restrictions hit, you had a lot of freedom in Galway, traveling from the city centre out to GMIT, where you study on the outskirts. And I know that your college life was very, very difficult. I think your mum used to be able to sleep at night worrying about you. You went to, is it Al Quds University in Jerusalem? So the logistical nightmare of just getting from Ramallah to Jerusalem every day, that was something, you had so much freedom in the first 5 months in Galway. And then suddenly, bang, the college closes down here as well, you know. So did you, I know the three of you became friends over this year. You didn't know each other before you got the scholarship. We used to have black humor and joke about this, that, oh my God, we left Palestine and now in Ireland they're in a lockdown.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I
Now,
think
but
I agree with you on that point, but I think what I need people to understand, like this lockdown is completely different from, I would say, a lockdown back home. I think there's like a sense of relief because like it's been like 13 months since I've seen a soldier, since I've seen a settler. Like just watching them on my Facebook, just seeing a video of them or a picture just reminds me of like how like I relaxed I am. Even if we were under lockdown, it's just the fact that you don't see them, you don't see a checkpoint. That's like just an instant relief. And I think that just because COVID happened, or even if it didn't happen, Palestine is under lockdown, pre-COVID and after COVID. So I just, it's not easy being living in Galway with nowhere to go, but at the same time there was like you were safe in a way, if you know what I mean.
you don't have fear at night walking
Yeah.
around. Yeah, yeah.
And that's,
Like people my age could relate, who are in Ireland can relate. Not your age. You guys are all in your mid-20s. What you're describing to me is maybe, I remember going to Derry. I used to work at Galway United football games. So when I used to cross the border into Northern Ireland before the peace, well before the peace process, I used to feel fear through my whole body because of the soldiers and the guns and the really ugly checkpoints. And that's all very much part of your life in Bethlehem, Ruba. And I suppose
Yeah.
that's a relief to be away from all that. But this was, yeah. Faten, you're from Gaza and you're involved in human rights. So I think when you left, Gaza has had a horrible time since 2007. It's been blockaded in by Egypt and Israel, and the fishermen sometimes can't, well, the fishermen can only go, I think, 5 kilometers offshore. People describe it as the biggest open prison camp in the world. Um, and you said something to me which I thought was poignant. And all three of us are Palestinians, but we can never visit each other when we go back to Palestine. So you became friends with Ruba and Tala, and you're not going home though. You are going to the International Criminal Court and University in Holland. But if you were to go home, you couldn't visit the girls, and that's really sad to imagine for an Irish person. You couldn't pop over to Bethlehem for a weekend to visit Ruba. Tell me about what it was like to grow up in Gaza. And you were in such a small piece of land, you know. I don't think many people in Ireland understand how small Gaza is.
Yeah, we talked about this before, and I mentioned to you like always like my friends from Ireland don't really get it that me, Tala, and Ruba, we live in the same country, which is a really small country, but in the same time we can't visit each other because I'm not allowed to go to Ramallah or Bethlehem. I'm just allowed to be in Gaza, and it's really hard even like because of the blockade that's been it's the 13th year blockade, and people like face really hard times trying to get a permit to go out of Gaza and even to get back into Gaza, even that they lived all their life there. Um, it's been really hard to live almost all my life there under the blockade, especially because it started in 2007, and I was just a kid back then. Growing up in such circumstances, like almost 4 hours of electricity a day, and no drinkable water, um, or of course the escalations every now and then, not to mention the wars. So yeah, of course it's been a hard time. And coming to Ireland this year, it's been like a short break from all of that.
Yes.
We all experience, yeah, some peace of mind. Yeah.
And I know you've done international criminal law, which is very specialized, but presumably your experiences growing up in Gaza have kind of inspired. I mean, that's such important work for the people of Palestine and Gaza that you are people like you can represent Palestine and stand up for international law, because it's not something that's considered important by some people. Has
Yeah,
it been
sure.
your passion all your life, Faten, then, to work in law?
Yeah, absolutely. Just growing up around all these circumstances. And even like I forgot to mention the fact that people from Ireland, especially because a lot of people I heard went 2 trips to Palestine, and them mentioning to me like places in Jerusalem or Bethlehem or Ramallah or any place where I'm not allowed to visit, and the fact that I had to like explain to them why I can't be there and why I didn't see these places that they already saw, but because they're like Europeans or Americans or from any other place in the world, they're allowed to go there, but like people from Gaza are not, and like vice versa, people from West Bank are not, can't see any place, can visit Gaza, and not, they don't know any of the places that people from outside have seen.
Yes.
Of course, like law have always been my passion, because growing up in such circumstances, you just think that there's something wrong. Like even as a child, like why this is still happening? The world is watching. This is not supposed to happen. There's something wrong there. So I've always like felt like even if I had to live this life, if I was born there, I had to go on to carry on with even the least of hope to change anything I can change. So I was interested in international criminal law, just hoping to make even the smallest change. So yeah.
Yes, and Ruba, you were also have a background in law and globalization. I think women's studies and the other gender globalization and human rights as well. Both of you are interested in human rights. So presumably your childhood in Bethlehem, uh, inspired you to see the injustice around you, the settlers, the soldiers on the street. Is that what inspired you to start studying in that area?
I think if you ask every Palestinian, they would say, like, my education is my resistance. Like, education is really important back home. So I think I just, when you, like, exactly what Faten said, like, even though you can't do, like, there's something you can do. It doesn't matter what it is, if it's just staying at home or just getting a degree that can help when you, like, if you're getting a degree outside Palestine, then you're coming back and using that degree to help others. So I think it just being aware that what is happening is not supposed to happen, and that using our voices and our stories, because like if you go anywhere and if you go on social media, you would see that there's one perspective that is being said about Palestinians. You have this narrative, like uncivil, uneducated Palestinians, like who use violent methods to express their resistance. And in fact, no, like my research, I found that women, even though they can't collectively resist, or like violently resist, they are resisting in their own individual everyday practices. So I think there's a lot of just being sure that what you're doing, like using your degree to highlight stories back home that people don't have the means or the voice to do so. So even though I might not free Palestine, or I might like can't do anything to make sure that they end up, those who are doing something wrong end up in prison, I just, what I'm doing is I'm making sure that my story and my voice is being heard, and making sure to highlight the voices of others who don't have the means to do so. So I think it depends on what you want to do and how you use what you know to help others. So yeah, I think
Wow.
obviously my background and Tala's and Faten's background helped us become who we are, and what happened in Palestine made us choose to come to Ireland.
Yes, okay. I think the three of you are amazing ambassadors for your country, from how good your English is, for your passion for other people and helping people and human rights and all that. And Tala, like, you're a filmmaker, that's what you've been studying in Galway for the last year. I think you've done a short documentary about a Bedouin family that were evicted from their home before you ever came to Galway. Tell us little bit about what inspires you as a filmmaker and what kind of films you want to make in the future.
Well, I chose documentaries technically because what I see in Palestine almost every day, and I always want to talk about Palestine, but in a different way. So a lot of people know about Palestine through only like seeing videos of protests, videos of violence, blah blah. But for me, I like to choose marginalized communities and neglected communities that people don't know about. So during my BA years, I chose to do like a short documentary film about this Bedouin community, where they speak about their personal experiences, about how they were living in a place called Bua, near Bethlehem and Hebron. But unfortunately, an Israeli settlement was built right in front of them, so they were bothering them to the point where they wanted them to leave. So I like, during my documentaries, I like, as I said, to focus on these marginalized communities, to show and raise awareness about the Palestinian cause in an indirect way, or through personal stories of people. So I don't like to always include myself in that, I don't. So for this year, Chaotic 2020, the film that I just finished for my master's degree, I didn't want to actually include myself in it, and it felt weird a bit to include myself, because I always wanted everyone to speak for themselves, and I like to be in the background. So when I included myself, I actually felt like, okay, I always talk about people and how they talk about themselves and their personal stories, but I also spoke about my personal story through my own film. So it was kind of an accomplishment for me to include myself in my own film. But I guess that, yeah, I made it happen.
Okay, so because of coronavirus, you became
Yeah.
a reluctant subject of your own documentary. You didn't want to talk to anybody. And I suppose, like a lot of Irish people, because we were colonized, we had so many years of oppression and trouble and violence. You know, we relate to your struggle in your country and how very hard life is for a Palestinian. But for you, you want us to look at other people. You know, we just think of Palestinians, but then you're looking at things like, well, what's it like to be a family with somebody who's disabled in Palestine, or somebody with mental health issues, or the Bedouins who are kind of pushed on, or, you know, they kind of have a nomadic lifestyle anyway. So yeah, you by identifying with the Palestinians, we're identifying with the underdog, but even within Palestine, you identify with the people who are marginalized, that's what you really hope to do in your documentaries. And I know Ruba and Faten saw your documentary last week. They were the first people lucky enough to see it. And the name of it is Chaotic 2020. So you you didn't expect so much chaos in Galway when you started it. You changed the whole thing. Yeah, amazing, really. Okay, so Faten, I think you said to me, well, I know in Galway, where I'm based in Ireland, there is a very good centre for human rights, and they do a lot of work with, I know, Al Haq in Ramallah, where Tala's from. Um, it inspired you, I think, that you met people in Galway who care so much about human rights, that are passionate about it. And like, tell me a little bit about that, and tell me about your experience in studying in that area in particular in Galway.
It's been really inspiring to study in the Irish Centre for Human Rights, not just because it's a really important center, like wide word, like considered one as one, but still that they are really interested about Palestine, and they had a lot of connections back in Palestine. Also, like, not just from the academic side, but what I experienced with the ordinary Irish people. We're talking about farmers, we're talking about journalists like you, we're talking about my professors, other people, the people I meet in the street or in some shops. They all know about Palestine, and they all have something to say for me. And they've been telling me that we usually see people like Palestinian people on the television and the news, but it's been always exciting for them to meet one in real life. And also what I saw from people, how they, as I told you, dedicated their life in some way to Palestine. Like, I remember someone told me that like growing up, like there is a lot of issues in the world, and if like you separated your voice trying to change all of them, it may not work for you, but then you choose one you're really interested in, and you make all your effort to change something in that, or at least raise awareness. So someone from here, from Galway, he told me he dedicated his life for Palestine, to at least let people know what's happening in Palestine. Like, he knows he can't himself change what's happening there, but at least he can let other Irish people and people around the world know what's happening there. And for him, that was enough, like, to do in his life, which was
Wow.
really inspiring. Yeah,
Great
like
for you,
back in
because
Palestine, I would have never imagined like someone in Galway from like a farmer, a normal farmer, having Palestine as something of his like most important things in life, which I could have never imagined that.
That's fantastic. Yeah. I suppose one of the hardest things about the coronavirus in Palestine, and Ruba, I might ask you about this. I know a lot of people from my part of the world, from Ireland especially, go to Palestine, maybe spend 3 months volunteering, just standing with olive farmers, just standing with farmers or families whose houses are being threatened, or the low-level intimidation that goes on with the settlers and the army. And unfortunately, those kind of people aren't traveling there this year. So that must be one of the, the sad things about the coronavirus. But would you be very aware that your struggle is not just a Palestinian struggle? That's it's an international one, Ruba. And
Yeah,
I suppose human rights and international law should apply to everybody, irrespective of
and
their
I think
country.
what's really sad about not just these people not being able to go to Palestine and volunteer there is like some Palestinian like farmers who only like have their sheep and that's it. Like, they seek comfort and they know that they are protected, like somehow protected, when they have foreigners next to them videotaping what the soldiers and settlers are doing. So the fact that just COVID basically took that protection away from these farmers, and you would see like just a regular Irish person just going to Palestine, even though he would think there's going there videotaping might be not that big of a deal, but it is really, really important, because first of all, what they're doing is that they raise awareness about an issue that is being marginalized and overshadowed by other issues. And I think that people, like ordinary people in Palestine, really like are thankful for those who are coming, even for just today. And the fact that when I tell a person I'm from Palestine, they were like, yes, I know where is that. I know that Bethlehem, I know Jerusalem. And they don't immediately assume it's Israel. And just the fact that they know what Palestine is, it doesn't matter if they're not very aware about the conflict. It's just they know that Palestine exists and it's a country and it's not just the West Bank or Gaza. So I think what are you doing at the moment is very important. Just a journalist from Galway, just really taking his time to highlight our stories and to make sure that Palestine is not forgotten or marginalized. So I think it's just like every small effort is really like we are thankful for those, whatever it is, just writing a post, taking a picture, volunteering, whatever it is, we are really thankful.
Right. And Faten, you left Gaza in September 2019. In 2020, Palestine seems to be in the news so much, and Israel and the conflict. We've had Trump's deal of the century. We've had these new deals only in the last week or two between Israel and a few Arab countries where Palestinians are saying they've been abandoned by fellow Arabs. Here in Ireland, we had a huge debate before and after our election about the Occupied Territories Bill, which was to ban settlement goods. So does it give you a different perspective looking at it from the west of Ireland, that your country is so much in the news at the moment, and a lot of it is very bad and sad news, and people are wondering what hope is there. So how does it feel looking on at all this news from Palestine, from Ireland?
I know that before I left there, just before I went out, I had the least amount of hope. Just being inside there and experiencing all these circumstances, in addition to unemployment, poverty, and a lot of other stuff, people there just gradually lose hope. And you barely hear about anything happening outside, like from people from the outside to Palestine. Like what you usually hear in the news is what countries says and what prime ministers here and there condemn or whatever. But you never hear about like small initiatives or big initiatives like the Occupied Territories Bill, which, like, when I came here and I heard about it changed a lot in my perspective. And just knowing that people remember Palestine from the outside and work for it, it's not like they just forgot about it and went on like the world is treating the Palestinian-Israeli conflict nowadays. You know, like, you're not forgotten. And this gives you a lot of hope, actually. And looking at all these news from outside, from here in Ireland, it feels way different than I can say if I was now in Palestine. Because you know how the world is treating these news, how people are reacting to them. And you feel like you're not alone. And that's what's important. That's what gives you hope.
And I suppose that's what international law is about, and that's what you're going to dedicate your life to, that
Yeah, absolutely.
People shouldn't be getting away with breaches of it and with war crimes. Tala, what you do is so important as well, because you're a witness and your camera can tell stories that others can't. But you need to be very brave. And I know the Israelis have tried to criminalize videoing their soldiers in the occupied West Bank. So is it going to be a very frightening future for you working as a documentary filmmaker in Palestine, or do you take inspiration from other people who make documentaries? You're still very young, you're 24, but your job is probably never going to be more important than when you go back, to be documenting what's going on.
Well, during my BA years, I always wanted to document what's happening like every week at my university. But at the same time, I was also like frightened a bit, because as soon as they actually see the cameras, they automatically know who you are and you're being surveilled. So in the beginning, I was always like very careful. But now I think I'm a bit more, I guess, like I want the world to see what's actually happening. So I sort of want to ignore the problems that they will actually like do to me if they see the camera. But at the same time, I always want to document this. So if I can just like have my phone up and quickly take a video of them, that's like also a good documentation for me, as long as I have what's happening and the truth that's in front of me. It doesn't really matter if they see the camera or not, but I'll always try to be careful.
Like Faten was talking earlier about the low level things that go on. You showed me footage of soldiers launching an assault on your university in East Jerusalem while you were in your classroom, throwing grenades, stun grenades, all armed soldiers. And you said this was a normal day in Al-Quds University, and that it didn't even make the news in Palestine almost. And we would never see this in Ireland because people weren't killed that day, you know. So that, presumably that is why the camera is so important, that people are there to document these abuses. Would you agree? Yeah. Okay. So how have you benefited from your year in Ireland, or how has it changed? And of course the coronavirus and being your classes closing down and your college mates leaving and everything, it was such a strange time for you, and yet the three of you have stuck it out for the last 6 months in Galway in the strangest of times. Ruba, how do you feel? You're going back to hopefully inshallah next month, in the next 2 weeks, the end of this month, so I'm sure you're really happy, looking forward to seeing your family and friends in Bethlehem.
I am very excited. It depends on if the Israelis give me a permit or not. So basically my fate is in their hands, but I think it doesn't matter because I think I've learned a lot and I'm ready to apply what I've learned. And hopefully I just go home and people are safe. Nothing really major happens in the next couple of months, because you never know. It's basically just you're living day by day. But I've learned a lot, and I think it was very eye-opening experience and of change. And I think I'm not fearful anymore because I know what I want and I'm willing to go for it. So I'm very thankful for this year.
And another very important part of your studies and your beliefs and everything is the importance of women's roles and in the struggle as well, which can be overlooked sometimes. I think when people talk about Palestine, they don't talk so much about how important the women's role is in the struggle. Is that something you hopefully will be working in after you go back?
Exactly. I think my research I realized that there's a single perspective and of how women are, and there's single representation about women. So I think I want to make sure that they're more highlighted, and that this kind of like image is not fixed. So I think my research, like what I did for my thesis, just was an inspiration for me for my future work. Is just to focus on women, because obviously, as you said, they are very marginalized.
Yeah. Okay. Faten, so I mean, some of the human rights lawyers in Galway have actually done a lot of work in Palestine and around Palestine. Has that kind of strengthened your faith in your own work for the future? Your experiences of meeting academics here, like I know Ray Murphy, I think, was he one of your lecturers? There are people in Galway who are experts on Palestine and your struggle. Has that kind of made you feel stronger going forward, that the work you do, that there are other people in other parts of the world who care about your homeland and how you've been so marginalized and left without a state? Is that so? Has it been good for you in that respect, being in Galway?
Yeah, absolutely. It was so inspirational just seeing many professors specializing in a lot of subjects about Palestine and writing a lot about it from perspective of international law and human rights law. It's the thing that I'm studying, and the fact that I had to study things about my country and see it justified in the right way, not how other media around the world trying to sell it to people. Because in international law, it's rules and it has to be applied. It's not something that you can play with. And seeing the truth written by a lot of professors, especially a lot of Irish professors, which is including, of course, Professor Ray Murphy and Shane Darcy, and a lot of them, which has really inspired me. Just being here and getting my education from them. It also gave me a lot of motivation to carry on. And yes, as you mentioned before, like I'm going to, after Ireland, I'm going to the Netherlands to continue in an advanced master's, and I hope it doesn't stop there. I hope I continue till the
Very good. Tala, I know you have an infatuation with seagulls, so when you go back to the West Bank, unfortunately, you won't be able to go to the sea, and maybe you won't meet too many Galway, west of Ireland, hungry seagulls who became your enemies in the lockdown. What will you take from your time in Galway when you go back?
Honestly, how you said, like, the most thing that I will miss for sure is that the sea is right next to me, so I can just walk 5 minutes and I'll be there. Unfortunately, I can't go to the sea in Palestine. I'm not allowed, either if I have a permit, and permits aren't easy to get. So
even that is crazy for an Irish person, that you need a permit to go to the sea. Or, you know, if you wanted to visit Faten's house in Gaza City, you'd need a permit to get across to another part of your own country. Yeah,
which is sad, quite sad. Even my aunt lives in Jerusalem and I can't visit her, and it's just like 30 minutes away from me.
It's incredible. Okay. Well, I just want to say, I think we'll finish up on this, but all three of you have made many, many friends, I know that, in Galway this year. They have been amazed by how wonderfully educated you are, how passionate you are about things like human rights, looking after the weak in society. And I want to thank you very much for doing this with me tonight, and for your time in Galway. You have represented your country so well. I think you've actually taught an awful lot of Irish people a lot about Palestine, because you've really humanized Palestine for people who haven't been there in a way that's incredible, you know. So, girls, thank you very much for tonight. And that was fantastic.
Thank you.